Okay, welcome and good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Planning Committee, including those watching online. If the fire alarm is activated, please vacate the offices via the stairs, either through the security door to my right or opposite the lifts in the foyer. Please do not use the lifts. Please assemble in Hawley Square on the green. Officers will assist you and advise when it is deemed safe to return to the chamber. Does anyone intend to film or record audio of the meeting? I would advise that if filming takes place, anyone in attendance in the public areas may have their image captured, and I urge anyone filming proceedings to avoid filming members of the public, particularly if there are children present. Any speakers using the microphones in the middle may be picked up by the cameras recording the meeting, and members of the public in the public gallery behind them may have their image captured. Would everyone present please ensure their mobile phones are turned to silent and that they are not used to make or receive phone calls or messages in the chamber whilst this meeting is in progress. I have the following members who wish to speak under Council Procedure Rule 20.1. Item 4, Councillor Keane and Councillor Duckworth. Also, item 4, Councillor Fellows will be speaking on behalf of Councillor Manners. And item 6A, Councillor Fellows. Would any other members who wish to speak under Council Procedure Rule 20.1 please announce it now? No one, thank you. I have apologies from Councillor Alban, substituted by Councillor Huxley, Councillor Bright, substituted by Councillor Brickcher, and Councillor Rizeki. Are there any other apologies? Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest? Thank you. Do members agree that minutes of the Planning Committee meeting held on the 19th of November 2025 be approved as a correct record? Do I have a proposer? Councillor Rattigan and seconded Councillor Boyd. Do members agree? Agreed. Thank you. Any site visits that will take place for committee members will be on the morning of Friday the 2nd of January 2026. Can I just check, are there any points of information? Nope. So agenda item 4 is the application to defer and delegate. It is DO5 Land at Hodges Gap Promenade, Margate, Kent. Speaking under Council Procedure Rule 20.1, I have Councillor Keane. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'm a ward councillor for Cliftonville West, and along with my fellow councillors, I fully support this development. We have a beautiful coastline, but this area is particularly difficult for many people to visit. It is only accessible via a steep slope, which many people cannot navigate on foot, so the reopening of the Grade 2 listed lift would enable more people, especially those with mobility difficulties or families with young children, to be able to visit this spot. We are an area with low car ownership, so many people do not have the option of driving down there. For those that do use a car, the provision of a disabled parking space further increases access. Historically, this was an area that did accommodate a building and community facilities. Currently, this area houses a rusty porter cabin and seasonal portaloos along an area of unkempt concrete promenade. There are no proper toilets, although as councillors this is something many residents have requested over the years, nowhere to change, nowhere to sit and limited refreshments available. The inclusion of a cafe and community space along with showers, changing facilities and proper toilets, including accessible toilets and baby changing facilities, would address all these problems. The cafe would provide a warm, comfortable environment, and the inclusion of a community space is a welcome addition. Many local groups, such as Birdwise, the Thanet Coastal Project, Sea Cadets and others, have already expressed interest in using this space. Funding is in place to build on the work that was undertaken over recent summers to provide exercise opportunities in the area for Thanet residents, particularly those that may not usually have participated in activities, enabling them to benefit from the improvements to health and well-being that they bring. Concerns have been raised about the ecology and biodiversity impacts, but ecological surveys and an impact assessment has been undertaken, and all the recommendations from the Habitats Regulation Assessment have been included in the planning proposal, so that both in construction and usage conditions would be in place to mitigate any impact. Although the proposals are exempt from the biodiversity net gain, the design also looks to incorporate biodiversity biodiversity enhancements. The plan also incorporates waste and recycling facilities, which will have year-round collections. I believe this development would enhance this area and open its use to more residents and visitors. Many residents do support this development and appreciate the benefits it would bring, especially in terms of accessibility, family-friendly facilities and community provision. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Duckworth, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a Walpole Bay swimmer. People in Cliftonville West, where I live, are very much in favour of this application. They're asking me who's stopping it. This has led to an increase in supporters on the planning portal. Last time I looked, there were roughly 40 in favour and 40 objecting. I'd like to address some of the questions asked by committee members at the last planning committee meeting in the chamber. Firstly, were the public consulted on the final plans? Over 600 people have been engaged right from the inception of this project. The plans are available at Walpole Bay Hotel for a week. Public comments have contributed to the final designs. Immediately before this application was submitted, an engagement meeting took place with After Party, that's the people who run the coffee truck, Walpole Bay Swimmers and Margate WI Mermaids. Also invited with a community sauna, ABC Cliftonville, who couldn't attend, but who've been supportive of the plans. Other key stakeholders engaged have included the Coast Guard Station, Jet Ski World, who are pleased about the provision for public toilets being proposed, and the Thanet Coast project. Here are some of the quotes noted from that session. It's bringing back to its former glory. It looks like a really lovely design. It's an important spot to so many people. The next question from committee members concerns the stability of the cliff. The beach and coastal engineering team have done an assessment. The building is deliberately positioned away from the cliff. Continuous monitoring and scheduled maintenance access have been integrated into the design to mitigate erosion and instability. The Coastal Operations Area Commander for HM Coast Guard has commented on our planning portal. This approach demonstrates a responsible balance between improving public amenities and safeguarding critical infrastructure. He also mentions that due consideration has been given so that emergency access and training can continue. Will the cafe take away all the parking? Enforcement officers have been instructed that at Walpole Bay, the council will only issue fixed penalty notices in instances where vehicles parked irresponsibly and block access for emergency vehicles. Concerns were raised about hypothermia. In winter, parking won't be an issue because fewer people use the pool. The flood risk assessment pointed at a 1 in 200 year event. The boulders will be a standard bollard height of 50 centimetres, so cannot be considered a trip hazard. They're introduced as a response to the public's wish to keep the site natural. Biodiversity. There will be a condition placed on construction to minimise impacts on bird species and wildlife during the building phase. Construction will be carefully and sensitively managed, working around the wintering bird season and high tides. Messages such as sensitive lighting plan will also be required to reduce any impact on wildlife, as well as a plan to demonstrate how the development enhances the biodiversity of the existing concrete promenade. There is a pebble roof being proposed for the cafe and native planting to support biodiversity. There are 2,500 people on the Walpole Swimmers Facebook page. Many support the application. Please think of the wider community and support the application.
Thank you. Councillor Fellows, on behalf of Councillor Manners.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for allowing me to speak on behalf of Councillor Manners, who is the Ward Councillor for Cliftonville East. He wanted to say that he's in support of the application, proposing a cafe, community space and toilet block at Walpole Bay. He goes on to say this is a modest but essential piece of infrastructure that will deliver meaningful benefits to residents, visitors and our wider local community. Walpole Bay is one of Cliftonville's most treasured coastal assets, attracting year-round visitors, from families enjoying the tidal pool to tourists discovering our coastline for the first time. Yet for many years, the facilities on site have fallen short of what a location of this significance requires. The proposed development directly addresses this long-standing gap: improved toilet provision with extended opening hours, a proper on-site management will significantly enhance the visitor experience and meet basic expectations of a growing visitor economy. The inclusion of a cafe is not simply an added convenience. The revenue from its lease is a key mechanism which will support the ongoing maintenance of the lift, ensure the toilets remain open and safe, and provide responsible oversight for waste and day-to-day site management. This creates a sustainable model, reducing the long-term burden on council resources while improving service standards. The community space also offers new opportunities for local groups and activities, contributing to well-being and social cohesion. The project will generate employment and training opportunities, support local jobs in an area that welcomes additional economic activity. He appreciates that some concerns have been raised, particularly regarding parking. However, the scale of the build is appropriate. The majority of residents have expressed clear support, and I believe broader public benefit far outweighs the limited impact on parking availability. This application is practical, community-focused investment that enhances safety, accessibility and long-term viability of Walpole Bay, and he urges the committee to approve it. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now hand over to the Principal Planning Officer. No, the Planning Applications Manager. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the application site is outlined in red. So the proposal is for a two-storey cafe, single-storey structure for community use, toilet block, showers, a raised platform around the cafe, and also some associated work. So the site visit occurred on the 5th of December. I'm just going to give an update to members following the last committee meeting that we had. So since the last committee meeting, as of this morning, there were 57 additional comments on the application, 27 objecting and 30 in support. So most of the comments were very similar to the comments that you've got in the report that you've seen, but there are some additional points that I will just run through to summarise. So general support for toilets and showers in the area pretty much across the board, but the letters objecting to the scheme raise the following concerns. Damage to promenade and cliffs during construction, scale of development, boulders too dangerous to pedestrians and vehicles, noise pollution, air pollution, reduced access to the tidal pool, material choices are unsuitable, access to Jet Ski World would be restricted. The letters in support went through the following, suggested that the development would reduce litter and antisocial behaviour, improve facilities for disabled visitors, dedicated parking for disabled visitors, less parking vehicles to help biodiversity. Existing parking on the promenade is illegal and dangerous. Investment is needed in the area, and the cafe would manage the toilets. We've also been made aware of a petition that is taking place at the moment, which has about 600 signatures, which is asking TDC as the applicant to scale back the development to just toilets and changing facilities. Obviously, the proposal in front of members is to consider the merits of the proposal that we have as the application and is not considering alternative options. So this is an aerial photograph of the site itself. I'm just going to run through the slides from last time. I have added some more in following the site visit for the issues that members raised. We're just going to walk down from the top. So this is the view down the existing access for pedestrians and vehicles. You can see there is some traffic signs talking about the speed limit and saying caution, it's a pedestrian area, sounding your horn. Going down then to the bottom of the slope, then there's the sign that you've got for pedestrians and also for Jet Ski World next to the start of the slope. Then this is a Google image just to show a sort of slightly elevated view of the gap as you go down the slope and then go to turn right. So this shows the existing gate that obviously sort of restricts in vehicles turning the corner. You can see obviously some vehicles that are parked there. As we've covered in the last meeting, there is unregulated parking that occurs. There is the public space protection order that's in place to stop parking there, but obviously it does occur. Then going round the corner, you can see at the gate there is another pedestrian sign there, and then looking towards the site itself. So to run through this slide, and members that were present will recall this, the proposal would have the boulders 2 metres from the railings to allow for a sort of trying to create a dedicated pedestrian route down to the left of the image. The cafe building itself would be located in this area here, so where the red van and the truck is, but also it would sort of protrude out closer towards this, so it would start restricting the access in terms of vehicles. You've got a distance of it's about 6 metres from the post that's here to the start of the actual the first structure, which is the toilets, and we'll go through the site plan so you can see the relationship between the toilet block and then the actual cafe itself. But looking the opposite direction, you've got, again, there's the red van, so the cafe structure is in this area here. The delineation on the ground does not delineate the extent of the site, so I'll show you that in a bit more detail, so you can see the relationship with the area to the east, where development is not occurring. So clicking through then, this is a view from the footpath. Now members didn't walk up this footpath, but we walked all the way along to Jet Ski World and then back. This is a view just showing down, so you can just about see the tidal pool there. Obviously it's grade 2 listed, so the structure itself is in this location here. It's 5.9 metres high, of which part of that is the 700mm for the raised platform. So it will not protrude past the cliff, but you will obviously get views as you come up this slope, as well as obviously from when you're down on the prom. And then this is the sort of view top down that you will get, so you will obviously see the buildings in this area here. So in terms of the site plan itself, we looked at this both on site and at the last committee meeting. So you have the cafe building itself, you then have the showers and then the toilets, you then have the shipping container with the roof above it for the community space and the disabled disabled parking space. Obviously the boulders as well that we've discussed as well are also shown on this slide. Just running through then the floor plans, you have again the cafe and seating area and the kitchen there, and then they've got the ground floor of both the toilets and the community space. And then there's an upper floor, so it is a full first floor, but not full in terms of depth of the building. So you would be looking down upon the people in the cafe on the ground floor below. And then this is the roof, which is put forward to be a pebble roof, but with planting on it as part of the ecological enhancements that are proposed as part of the scheme. So this is the front elevation of the buildings themselves. As mentioned, there's the raised platform you can see there, and it's a 2-storey building. It's to be timber clad with the timber windows. The shipping container is metal, and then similar cladding for the toilet box. You can see the showers are external, so they're not covered. Then just going through the rear elevation, so again you can see the sort of change in level that occurs from looking at the back, with the back of the toilets, the back of the cafe, and then the community structure itself. So there is, at its smallest distance, there is 2 meters from the back of the platform at the back here, which is the ramp, to the actual cliff itself. This is a side elevation showing the toilet block in the foreground with the cafe behind. So again, you can see the increase in level that occurs with the platform at the front and the planter at the back. And then this is the opposite side elevation showing a door into the cafe itself. And then this is the section showing, as mentioned, the first floor. So it's not, so you have seating up top and seating at the bottom as well, but with the kitchen and counter area to the back of the building. And this is an elevation just showing the design of the roof that will go over the outside community space for the shipping container here. So the shipping container itself is not very deep, but it would allow for space for desk, chair, etc. for use by different groups in the future. And then this is the other side elevation showing that section. So just to confirm in terms of the extent of the site before running through the highways plans, the area that is here, so you can see the line, members, on the photo that shows the change in surface materials. This car that's been parked perpendicular to the other cars is effectively, the end of that is the end of the extent of the site. So the site stops at around this area here. The rest of this area is not proposed for development. So just running through the highway sort of arrangement plans, the areas for vehicles to move through the site, you have the width of vehicles to be able to go through a pinch point gap in this area here, with denoted by the boulders. So the route through to Jet Ski World is still provided. They have shown on this plan that there is an area that they intend for vehicles for loading and unloading to be located, which would still allow a normal car, and a Land Rover Discovery is the one that's been used in the transport assessment, to pass a vehicle that is parked there. The pink line denotes the access that's available for wheelchair users, so it's got to have a ramp that goes all the way around to make sure the gradient is in place, which is why the design has the platform going all the way around with an access to the side. And the green line denotes where the intention is for pedestrians to be walking if they're going to the east. So just looking at some of the tracking plans, I appreciate this might be slightly difficult for members to see, but I've got two plans to show a car coming down the slope and round the corner. The main point is that when you go round the corner as existing, at that point there is a pinch point at the moment where only a single car can pass. So when you turn that corner, at the moment, if there is a vehicle coming in front of you, you either have to reverse back into the area where there is turning behind the corner, so I'm just indicating it on the slide, or the car has to wait and manoeuvre. That is where currently cars are parking. There is space in this area here for a car to be situated so a car can pass, and similarly going the other way, this is showing the tracking that would run round for two cars to pass in that area. So the width of vehicles that's been shown at this point is a 2.1 metre wide vehicle, and that is done on the basis of, in the bottom right there, you see the Land Rover Discovery. At the closest point, the width is about 2.6 metres. Obviously, this is looking at the position of the boulders that have been shown on the plans. Now, there is a condition that would require the boulders to be in situ as per all of the other structures before the use is there, but clearly these structures themselves, they can be moved once originally put down by the people that obviously put them down, and clearly there would be the ability to do that. There's also the fact that the boulders themselves would not need planning permission in and of themselves. They are means of enclosure. You can put a means of enclosure up even next to a road that is up to 1 metre high, so this is only 0.5 metre in height. So this is, though, what's been proposed to try and slow down cars even more than they are already advised to be slow in this area. And then, this is it's already been mentioned by one of the speakers, the height of the boulders themselves, just to show the section there. There has also been submissions made in the transport statement with regards to tracking for fire appliances and small refuse trucks with 2 axles. It is very much the main issue is the existing arrangement, which is turning around that corner to be able to get where the cliff is and the actual railings are, where that gate is at the moment. So there is no change to that arrangement. It's just that vehicles would potentially have to stop further up if they are coming down from the east to the west. But there is still the space that is behind where you are actually doing the turn around to the right. And then this is another swept path analysis that's been done, which is on the basis of having a car with a boat on the back, which is longer than most vehicles would have. I think mention's been made about jet skis potentially being on the back because of Jet Ski World, and this is showing a vehicle that is longer than you would get, so it's 12.8 metres to just show, well, this is the existing arrangement really more than anything when you're turning the corner. One of the other issues that was mentioned on site was to do with flood risk. So there is a flood risk assessment that's been put in with the application. The areas in light blue are the flood zone 2 areas. Flood zone 3, which is the areas of high risk of flooding, is the dark blue. So flood zone 2 is the medium risk of flooding, which is between generally a 0.5% and 1% chance of flooding, which is the equivalent to around a 1 to 200 year storm event. The Environment Agency have been consulted on the flood risk assessment, and they've required that the raised platform has to be present. It still has to be the level to raise the cafe up. But you can see obviously you are only looking at a very small area. However, you can see by the blocky nature of this, the Environment Agency maps simply do not drill down into the level of detail to be more precise than this, but therefore that's why it's been taken as, you know, effectively the whole cafe as if it's in zone 2, hence why it's been raised up by the extent it has. So it is considered certainly sufficient that that matter has been dealt with. This is the illustrative plan that's been provided to show what the site would potentially look like. Just to pick up a couple of the other points, the principle of development for all of the facilities is supported by planning policy, policy E10 and CMO2. And obviously members have to consider the merits of this proposal rather than, as I've mentioned, an alternative proposal which strips out certain elements of the scheme. We do consider that the height and design of the structures are acceptable in that area. There's no objection from the Conservation Officer with regards to the impact on the listed Walpole tide pool. Then there are also provisions within the conditions related to the Construction Environmental Management Plan to ensure that measures are taken in terms of when construction is taking place with regards to birds, as well as a lighting condition requiring further details to be submitted. The contribution to the SAMs has been fixed, as mentioned at the last committee meeting, for a contribution of £10,080, and the recommendation from officers is to defer and delegate for approval, subject to the safeguarding conditions and the transfer of the SAMs contribution prior to issuing the decision. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I move that the officer's recommendation for approval is adopted. Would the Vice Chair please second?
Seconded.
Thank you. And any speakers? Councillor Garner.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad we went on the site visit, actually, because it did help a lot. I think it's fair to say our main concerns, I believe, I'll speak for myself. My main concerns were the highways related issue, the cars coming through to go to Jet Ski World. It wasn't necessarily about the loss of parking, because you're not, as I understand it, people aren't meant to park there anyway. So it was about the access to Jet Ski World, and obviously putting this development here, the intention would be, I would assume, to make it more popular, you know, to get more people down there. Else, if you're just doing it to cater for the people who already go there, well, that's nice for the people who go there, but you want to make it more popular. So you want to attract more families down there, attract more people down there to use the facilities. So I wanted to see what it would be like when there's less room for cars to drive up and down, to see you know, if there is a danger to anybody who might be running about down there. And as it happened, while we were down there, there was a couple of cars came down that slope and turned right quite a pace that had to stop quite, because there were a lot more people down there than usual, I guess. So it does raise concerns for me. Now I realise, I know KCC Highways have, in their wisdom, signed this off and said this is meets all requirements. There isn't an increased danger to people, and you know, there are signs at the top that you're warning people. So if anything happens to somebody, it's not the fault of the people of us for doing this. It's a fault of people for not driving with due care and attention. But I think we do have to take that into account. I have to take that into account anyway. If I'm approving something, I have to be happy in my own conscience that this is that this is a safe development. So, I mean, others were there, so I'm happy to listen to what others have to say about that.
Councillor Matterface.
Thank you, Chair. I was also on the site visit, and yes, a couple of vehicles did come down. But by the time this development, if it's approved, is up and running, people who were coming down to go to jet ski will know there'll be people, surely. I mean, they're not going to be random people just driving down. So one would assume that people would become aware that there's a development there and would treat it accordingly. I would hope the signage at the top would be improved, because you hardly notice it. But we were talking about cars parking there, which they're not supposed to be. I mean, quite clearly, once the boulders are in there, they won't be able to park, because they'll be driving their vehicles over the boulders. But my other concern was, having seen it, I think I feel much happier. So, I mean, I'm glad I went. We did have a very long visit there, and we did, as was said, walk along to jet ski. I would just hope, taking Councillor Garner's point, that people coming down there in future would be more aware that it was going to be popular. I think it would be good in the sense that it will spread out the people from, particularly possibly from Botany Bay, which, as we know, tends to get very crowded, major parking issues up there. But obviously the people who go to the tidal pool will have to, if this goes through, will have to park at the top rather than at the bottom. But yeah, thank you. That's what I want to say.
Councillor Moore.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Having personal experience of driving down Hodges Gap and onto that area for many years as a jet skier, as an emergency fire appliance driver, I have no issues with it, because if you're driving there with an appliance, I would like to think that the people that are running the cafe and Jet Ski World will have some kind of risk assessment and procedure for, if there's an incident, they will get out marshals, they can guide people in, as would be very proactive. That's not part of the planning, but that's something that they would naturally do. It is a pinch point, I agree, but again, with the added signage, as Councillor Matterface has said, and with the requirements from Jet Ski World and the cafe, the added signage and the vehicles that do attend there will be under a reduced speed anyway, I'd like to think. And if need be, you know, maybe at a later date, if it's still a concern, maybe they could put CCTV in to monitor it, but that's not part of the planning. I have no objections to this. I think it's a valid point for the area, which is generally run down. It'll be a natural improvement. It's an asset to the community and for people to visit our fantastic coastline. It's not used enough, so I'm in favour of it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Wing.
I was also on the visit, and I'm aware, because I do use that to swim occasionally when I missed the high tide in Western Undercliff. Then you can always go to the tidal pool, because it's one of the few places you can actually swim at low tide. And I think what we've got to, and I am conflicted because I am a sea swimmer, is that it's about a loss of amenity. This will clearly improve amenity for one section of our community, but it will reduce the amenity for another section of our community, which is the wild swimmers. And you wild swim because you want to go somewhere where there isn't that many people and there aren't really major facilities. It's about being peaceful in the sea and your mental health and well-being. I don't enjoy sea swimming in the summer at the Western Undercliff because there's too many people there. I still do it, and I accept that I have to share the beach with other people. We do have 17 beaches, and we have 2 basic places where you can wild swim. One, the unique one, which is here, and the Western Undercliff, which will see its own cafe appear, where there's mixed views on for and against. So I do get it. I don't have a problem with the designs at all. I think they're great. I do have an issue with what is going to happen down there, because you are going to increase the numbers of people using that area, but you're actually restricting the space. At Dumpton Gap, no traffic is allowed to go down there. You know, the gate is shut at the top. When beach huts need to be take stuff to beach huts, you have to book a time to go down there. It's normally in the morning or in the evening when there's less people at Dumpton Gap. So I'm a bit confused about why this one is open, and clearly it is open because there's jet ski world round the corner. So I do have real concerns about increasing the number of people there. I also have concerns if we haven't got, because clearly there is parking further along, which is good, because people do park down there, and they will still possibly have the opportunity to drive along and park further along, which I think is a good thing. But if we haven't got signage at the top which says 50 parking bays and they're all full, you are going to have people who will drive down there. They will go all the way to the end, see there's no parking and come back out, exactly as they do in Ramsgate when they go to past Wetherspoons. They go looking for parking and then they drive back out, and there's a constant flow of people looking. Could I ask where the lift is in relation to this building? I mean, it's not part of this application, is it? But it has been quoted about improving access. In terms of metres, how far along is it from, you know, give a rough estimate. I should have made us walk to it.
I'm sorry, I'm going to struggle to do it in metres. I can ask my learned colleague to my left whether or not she might be able to find out that whilst the debate's going on, if that's okay. Oh, well, I believe we may get some assistance from Councillor Moore. But
I think the lift is behind the indoor bowls, which is by the Walpole Bay. So you're looking at 300-400 metres, is that about it?
So, although I'm really glad that's happening as well, we'd love both of ours to be working in Ramsgate, but when the lift is not working, because we know that that lift is not going to be working 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and we know these lifts have the terrible habit of not working unless they're maintained. So although I appreciate the fact the lift will be there, it's still a hell of a walk if the lift isn't working. And then you've reduced the parking spaces. I also have concerns with one disabled parking bay. At present, you know, 15 people in disabled vehicles can go down there, park near the Walpole Bay and get in the Walpole Bay. So where does a second disabled person go to park if there's more than one disabled person? Also, I find it really strange. Could we go back to the plans of where the disabled people gain access into the cafe? Because I find it quite strange that you park in that disabled bay over there and you have to walk all the way past the cafe, almost to the furthest part, to then walk round the building to go in the entrance, which is nearest to where you parked. I don't think that's been very well thought out at all. I mean, if you're going to give disabled people access, then really there should be access at the nearest point to where you park. So I do still have concerns, and I do still have highway concerns, because I believe we're going to increase the number of vehicle movements, because people will go down there and they will go down there looking for parking spots. We're increasing the number of people. I'm glad I went on the visit, because I wasn't really sure how much beach is left at high tide. There is no beach left at high tide, very much like Dumpton Gap. Everybody moves onto the promenade. You know, when you go to the beach, you take stuff with you. You don't just, you know, have a towel under your arm. You've got chairs and stuff. Where are those people going to go at high tide? And that could be in the middle of the day. So I just have some concerns, and the loss of amenity for the wild swimmers, that are really making me quite conflicted, I'm afraid.
Any other speakers? Okay, I also agree that going on the site visit was very, very valuable, and I appreciated it as well. I just wanted to check a couple of things. Our Cabinet member said that the height of the boulders is not a trip hazard, but the KCC Highways advice was that it is a potential trip hazard. Has the height of the boulders changed, or is there anything different that has changed that?
There was a clarification request by KCC Highways to get some further information about them, which is what then the section that I showed with regards to the height of those was provided to sort of confirm that. KCC Highways haven't objected to the boulders themselves. I think to pick this point up, they obviously are trying to sort of delineate, and also have been designed around trying to be a bit more akin to the rock faces that you've got there. As I mentioned, it is something that could be located there for different purposes as a means of enclosure without needing permission. But there's no highway safety concern that's been raised by KCC, and it's more about where they are located and how that affects vehicles moving around. That's I think probably more of a consideration.
Well, if I have no other speakers, then we will now put the motion for the officer's recommendation to defer and delegate to the vote. Those in favour, please show. Those against? And any abstentions? Thank you. That's carried. Thank you. No, what page am I on? That's why I want it on single-sided, because I get muddled up. Okay, thank you. We're moving on to agenda item 5, which is the application for a non-material amendment to planning permission FTH 231352, land at Stanner Court, Manston Road, Ramsgate. The planning applications manager will now outline the report. No, the principal planning officer. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is an application for a non-material amendment to some changes at Stanner Court, where an application was approved for 9 3-bed houses and 2 4-bed houses, which is on council-owned land and is currently being developed by the council. So this is Stanner Court. Here, the proposal or the development that was approved is within the car parking area here. So it originally removed the garages, and the houses were erected in the location of the garages. And this is a closer view of the parking area. So the main changes from the scheme are in this location here, where there was approved 2 parking spaces which are moving closer to the road. And it involves changes to the ramped access to the front of Stanner Court, and it also looks at relocating some of these cycle and bin stores. So I'll just show you the plan. So this is the approved plan. So the areas that's being discussed is these 2 parking spaces to the bottom of this plan in this location here, and there was a bin store next to it, and both of those are moving slightly closer to the road. So this is the proposed plan here. So those are the 2 parking spaces proposed now, and the bin store again. Then the other change is in this location here, one of the standard parking spaces are being changed to a disabled parking space. So that's the approved plan, and this is the proposed plan with a disabled space located here. Another change is that the scooter storage units are being removed. They are not currently proposed to be replaced, but the housing team have advised that there will be a consultation carried out with residents in terms of looking at where those would be relocated to. The proposal also looks at moving the cycle storage area from this location here next to the substation. So again, this is the proposal with the cycle parking next to the substation. And the reason being that they can't have anything in this location here to the bottom of Stanner Court because the scaffolding is going up, and nothing in this area can be provided because of the potential danger from the scaffolding and works that are being carried out to the building. And then the other change, as I mentioned, is in this location here, where there's an existing ramp that runs into the building. It's ever so low in terms of the actual gradient of the ramp. So we don't consider the change here to be an engineering works or require planning permission. So this is it currently. I know it's very small. I have got a bigger plan in a moment, but the ramp runs in here at the moment, and then they're looking to reorientate it so it runs adjacent to the front elevation of the building instead. So this is slightly more detailed plan, just so you can see it again. So again, the 2 parking spaces in this location here to the front move close to the road, along with the refuse store, the disabled parking space in this location here, the bike storage to the substation here, and then again the ramp here. So overall, given the context of the overall scheme, these are considered very minor changes, and with limited visual harm or harm to residents, and therefore it's recommended that it be approved as a non-material change to the original planning consent. Thank you.
I move that the officer's recommendation is adopted. Would the Vice Chair please second?
Seconded.
Any questions or comments? In that case, we will now put the motion for the officer's recommendation for approval to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried. Thank you. Agenda item 6A, application for approval, AO1, land adjacent to 130 Alpha Road, Birchington. I have public speaking against the application. Ms Gilbert, you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. I represent the 11 people most negatively affected by this unacceptable proposal and who, alongside Birchington Parish Council, continue to call for its rejection. At this committee's meeting on 15th of October, the proposed dwelling was described as overbearing, too large and harmful to the neighbouring amenity, particularly to the neighbouring bungalow Farina. The existing bungalow trailside is currently occupied, even closer to the proposed build, but owned by the same developer and therefore silenced. This amended plan does not reduce the scale, nor loss in amenity to Farina, nor to the original bungalow. The application still ignores the Birchington neighbourhood plan policies, design code and guidelines which carry equal weight to the Thanet local plan policies and trumps them in this case as there is conflict. The case officer attempts to justify compliance by referring to Birchington neighbourhood plan policies B1 design and B16 movement, despite the proposal still creating overdevelopment and loss of amenity for existing residents. Ignoring existing densities and character is an unsympathetic response to the surrounding area and adds unacceptable light pollution. Precedents of the design in comparisons with loft conversions are highly debatable. The extent of the impact on water pressure, foul sewerage and surface water disposal is still not addressed by the owner. The ancient narrow service piping is unlikely to support an additional 4-bedroom occupancy, risking blockages and localised flooding to the existing bungalows and neighbouring gardens. The access driveway, never designed for heavy vehicles, now has a scoured surface from the work on the existing bungalow, potentially reducing the tolerance on the pipes. The case officer report does not refer to Birchington Neighbourhood Plan B14 biodiversity. The developer has not submitted the required recommendations for the implementation, management and monitoring of the environmental impact on the site for at least 30 years. The proposed resiting has increased the negative biodiversity net gain to minus 39.41% habitat units and minus 31.87% hedgerow units, both likely to be increased after occupation. Offsetting this environmental damage by carbon credit does not benefit Thanet in the foreseeable future. West Kent sites are yet to be validated. The only other sites are in North and West UK and overseas. There is no electric vehicle charging point. Concentrated air pollution from the frequency of additional 2 cars using the access driveway will affect the air quality to the bungalows and surrounding gardens. In summary, this planning application still contravenes local, district and national standards and therefore damages the locality, Thanet, and will significantly and negatively affect the long-term amenity of the people I represent here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking as Ward Councillor under Section 20.1, Councillor Fellows, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. So, members, here we are again for the 3rd time looking at this application. At the planning meeting on the 15th of October, this committee threw out the last application. It was clear to everyone at that meeting that the proposal was not acceptable for the numerous reasons I listed back in my speech back then, plus all the objections the neighbours had made, and also the objections from the parish council in their representations. Members from this committee had already previously deferred the application to a site visit, at which members saw for themselves that this plot cannot take the proposed house that the application was for. It was just not acceptable, and it was clear for all to see. So that brings us to this modified application this evening. But what's changed? As you heard Miss Gilbert, not a lot. So they've moved the proposed house slightly back, slightly to the right, shaved a few edges off the roof, and from that's it from what I can tell. I'm sure officers will tell you now that it's acceptable, but clearly it's not. We need to remind ourselves of the fundamental issues why this committee voted against the proposal last time. The application is overbearing on the neighbours. It's an overdevelopment of a very small plot, which is a side garden of a bungalow up a private drive. A proposal that would dominate its private neighbourhood and not respect the character and setting and that of its surroundings. At the last meeting, following the decision to refuse the application, this committee gave specific advice to the applicant to what possibly and might be acceptable. This advice was to come back with a smaller, single-storey proposal. Personally, I do not think that plot can take any development that would fit in with this very private setting. But the applicant has chosen not to accept that advice and bullishly just reapplied with the same unacceptable, overbearing, overdevelopment proposal that's only slightly moving the position of the house on the plot. How on earth can anybody think that this is acceptable this time round if it wasn't acceptable for the first time? So based on this committee has no choice but to refuse this again this evening. This application also goes against a number of local plan policies. The Birchington Parish Council has strongly objected to this application on the grounds that it is in breach of multiple neighbourhood plan policies, and this application is not compliant with the village-wide guidelines. All this application does is bring misery and upset to long-standing residents who have lived adjacent to this proposed site in a private setting for a number of decades. There is no way that the benefits of this application outweigh the harms, no matter what you are told this evening. I trust my colleagues on this committee will do the right thing this evening and quite rightly, again, refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now check who is going to out. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. So this application is brought back before members again following two committee meetings and a committee site visit. This is the site here. The application site is next to number 130 Alpha Road and is for the erection of a two-storey, four-bed detached dwelling within the existing garden space adjacent to number 130. So just to remind members, this in terms of where the location is, so this is the plot here at the end of the access road between the two properties, 130 Alpha Road and Farina, which is in this location here. And then this is an aerial view from above. So again, this is the plot in this location here. So again, number 130 on the right-hand side here and Farina to the left here. And then the existing garage serving 130 in this location here. And then this is the access road leading onto Alpha Road. And then just to remind you, these are the photos of 130 Alpha Road. So the existing property that the dwelling would be erected within the garden of. This is the location for the dwelling, so the garage will be demolished and the dwelling will be in this location here with parking to the front. Again, the dwelling would be in the, to the right hand side of this slide with the garage removed and parking in this location here. And then this is looking back towards the access road, so again this would be the parking to the front and the dwelling would be in this location here. And then looking again back towards 130, so again this is the application site within the garden here. And then just showing you now, looking towards Farina on the left-hand side, this is the neighbouring property. So at the committee site visit, we visited the neighbour and went inside the property to look from the side-facing windows. The window on the left-hand side served a kitchen, the central window served a study, and the right-hand side window served a bathroom. So just showing you, this was taken from inside the property. So this was the kitchen window looking onto the application site. This was the study looking onto the application site, and then the bathroom looking onto the application site. This is the access road that was onto Alpha Road. So again, following some of the previous committee meetings, the tree you see in the photo here has had a TPO placed on it. And then again, this is a view of the access road with the TPO tree, which is within the ownership of the applicant. And then again, looking towards the site from Alpha Road. So this was the original proposed layout plan. Members raised concerns at the previous meeting and deferred the application for amendments to reduce the scale and to resite the proposed dwelling. So the changes that have occurred are, this is the proposed amended layout plan. So the changes are that the building has been moved further from Farina, so the gap between the proposed dwelling and Farina to the left has increased. So the increase has gone from 5.1 metres to 5.8 metres at the closest point. So at this point here, so increased from 5.1 to 5.8. And at the widest point here, it's increased from 5.8 to 6.4. The dwelling has also been set back 3.4 metres from the frontage. So the previous one, again, just jumping here, this was the previous layout, which had the small porch projection to the front here, and then this was the main building here. and then this has now been set back 3.4 metres from the frontage. The parking court area has been increased in size, although it hasn't actually increased the number of parking spaces, but just has increased the manoeuvrable space within that parking area. The result of this is that the distances to the neighbours to the front and rear has changed. So the distance to the properties in Ingle Close that to the front of the site is now 33 metres, and the distance to the rear is now 21 metres. The gap to number 130 has reduced by half a metre, so it has reduced the gap to this property. And you can see as well, by setting it back 3.4 metres, the building has also set back further into the garden. The footprint hasn't actually reduced, it's just relocated. So the rear elevation now projects further into the garden area. So again, just a closer up view of those changes. And the proposal is also to do some additional hedge planting along the boundary. So the yellow line you can see there is some hedge planting on the boundary line. So in terms of the elevation, so again, members asked for some changes to the scale of the building. So this was the original front elevation and side elevation, and this is now the proposed front elevation and side elevation. So the height of the building hasn't reduced, the footprint hasn't reduced, but the roof form has reduced slightly by the addition of barn hips to the front and rear elevation of the building, and by the hipping of the front gable projection at single-storey level. So just to show you again, this was the original and this is the proposed. So all other aspects of the building remain the same. So this is the rear elevation and the other side elevation. So again, to the rear you see the barn hip that's been added and the hipping of that front gable projection. The floor plans remain the same as the previous proposal. And then this was the existing street scene, so the one without any development. So you can see the gap between the properties. This was the previous proposed street scene elevation. So this showed the coloured line you can see there was the previous application that was withdrawn. Then this was the application that was with the plan that was originally submitted, which members saw at the last meeting. And then this is now the amended elevation. So with the increased gap between the proposed side elevation and Farina, you can now see that the impact on the 25-degree line from the neighbour's window is improved slightly. And you can see now the change as well between in terms of the gap from what was previously there in number 130. So this just shows the gap changes from the street. So again, the outline of the orange was the previous scheme that you saw, so you can see the changes there. And then this is showing the distances. So the distances that I mentioned, so the 33 metres from the front elevation to the nearest property in Ingle Close here. So in terms of that distance, obviously that's a significant distance that we wouldn't be able to argue that there would be any significant overlooking from that distance. And then 21 metres to the rear, and this was a side elevation of the neighbouring property to the rear. So that distance again is considered acceptable. So in terms of these changes, it is considered that there would be a reduced impact on Farina as a result of these changes. So there's an increased gap to that property. You can see on this plan here, the lines here show the locations of the neighbours' windows. So by the setting back of the 3.4 metres has now pulled the dwelling back so that it doesn't obstruct the kitchen window to the front. It still would obstruct the study window to the centre of the building, but by setting it back, there's obviously improvements to outlook at an angle from those windows. And then at the back here was the bathroom, which being non-habitable room, we wouldn't be able to raise any concerns on the impact on that window itself. So in terms of the resiting, it is considered that there are improvements now. The increase to the rear isn't going to have any further impact on any rear elevation windows on either neighbouring property, given the distance to both of the rear elevations. So it's not considered that the setback here is a problem, and there's still sufficient garden space to serve the dwelling. the improvement to the carport at the front does help as well. So whilst we did provide you with some tracking plans showing that the parking spaces previously worked and that cars would be able to enter the parking space and reverse back up the road, there's now additional space because of that setback for that turning within the frontage as well. In terms of the scale, it is appreciated that the scale hasn't reduced as much as I think members sort of had hoped for. The changes do only achieve the changes to the roof by having the barn hip. It has reduced the roof form and the reduction, hipping of the front gable projection also is improving the impact on the neighbour's window by not having the gable, like the ridge height of that roof there. So that the reduced form of that front projection is helping as well. But overall, I think it was previously considered by officers that given the fact that the ridge height of this property doesn't exceed the ridge height of the neighbours, given the fact there is some evidence of other properties in the surrounding area where there is accommodation at first floor level, it's not considered that there's any distances for overlooking from this, and it is now considered that there's the increased distance to the neighbour's window. So it is actually an improvement beyond the previous plans that the members saw. It is considered that there isn't really any significant harm to the character appearance in the area from this proposed dwelling. It's similar in appearance to the design of the neighbouring properties. In terms of materials that were being used, it was brick, render and clay tiles, which is in character with the material palette of the surrounding area. So it is now considered that it again should be recommended for approval. Thank you.
I move that the officer's recommendation is adopted. Would the Vice Chair please second?
Seconded.
And do I have any speakers? Councillor Moore.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I can't remember if I was at the previous meeting for this one, so can I just have some clarification? So the original application didn't fail on any planning rules. It was only that the committee didn't like the size, mass and density of the original one. Is that correct?
Yes, I mean the previous proposal was recommended for approval by officers, so we did feel that the proposal complied with the Thanet local plan and the Burton neighbourhood plan. It was considered that the design was in keeping with the character area, and we did consider that the harm to neighbours wasn't significant. But yes, members felt that there potentially was harm, I think from the site visit meeting, and therefore the amendments have sought to try and reduce the impact further on the neighbours and to try and amend the scheme slightly to again reduce the scale of it in terms of its location.
Right, so coming back on that one then, this application doesn't break any planning application rules as such and you're approving it, but still the size, mass and density of it is still what the committee would refuse because of the size of what it was. All they've done is just put barn hips on, which is cut off corners, which hasn't reduced the mass at all, and all they've done is relocate it further into the site just to move it away from that bungalow. So the impact is still there, the mass is still there, and the developer hasn't taken into consideration what we as a committee have suggested and recommended in a proactive way. So I would be against this application and would vote for refusal. Thank you.
Councillor Garner.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I remember this one quite well because I remember when we went in the neighbour's kitchen and looked out, and I think it was quite obvious how this scale of building where it was going to be was going to be an issue for them and was overlooking. So moving back a little bit, it's still the same scale, moving back a little bit improves it a little bit, because it hasn't just moved back, has it? It's moved across, so towards 130. So, in fact, could you just go to the plan that shows the footprints? Because I found that quite. Yeah. So it's really 130 is very close to it now, isn't it? So I was just wondering, could you tell us what is what windows are on that side of 130?
So this was the extension application that was approved for number 130, which members would have seen when we visited the site. This was underway, this had commenced. So this is what they are building. So this is the side elevation closest to the proposed development. You can see that there's just a secondary side window to the dining lounge area, and other than that, there's no other windows to the side elevation of number 130.
Okay, thanks. So that might be considered, because I know we have to take, and you can, obviously you will correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't, it isn't, you know, we do, it's just because it's the applicant that lives there, we have to consider the building as itself, don't we? Because the applicant's not going to live there forever, potentially, and there's, you know, a new person coming in might not like that, or it might, but you have to think about that. So there is a potential overlook in there, but I'm still have grave concern. I still feel similar as I felt before when I looked out of the kitchen window of the neighbour and thought that was much too big and too close.
Councillor Packman.
Thank you, Chair. I don't disagree with anything that's been said. I think there's still significant harm. I do think there's still significant harm to neighbours, and I can't support this at all. So thank you.
Councillor Matterface.
Thank you, Chair. Do we have any pictures of Carino, the house on the other side? Because are we talking about a bungalow on each side and this one in the middle? That's my question. And I just want to make a comment that when Emma was introducing, you used the adverb slightly, at least twice, if not 3 times. You said it's improved slightly, changes slightly, which gives me the feeling that slightly means just a little bit, not an awful lot. And I do have, I mean, unfortunately, I couldn't go on the site visit, but what's been said, I agree with what Councillor Moore said, if we didn't like it before, and all they've done is made some minor changes and move it that way, I can't really, or they moved it back a little bit, which is, I think, something we discussed. It's the fact that you use that word slightly, which gives me some concern. Thank you.
Yes, I did use probably slightly a few times there. I suppose members were obviously quite keen, I think, at the last meeting to try and reduce the scale of the roof, and I think there were implications that they would be keen to see the first floor accommodation removed. We have gone back to the applicant, asked for changes to be made. Obviously, they were at the last meeting or had seen the last meeting, and these are the amendments we now have. We can't seek anything further. It's up to members to decide. If you feel that we previously recommended approval anyway because we did feel that the impact was acceptable. This is now, the impact's been reduced further by these slight amendments to the roof form, and therefore we're still recommending approval because of that, because it's still better than the previous situation. But I appreciate that it potentially doesn't reduce the scale as much as members were looking for. However, you do need to take into account the surrounding area. Obviously, this is Farina next door, so it is a single-storey building. The aerial views, hang on, let me go back. I think I've got an aerial view that was so here. So you can see from the aerial view of surrounding properties. So this is the application site here. You've obviously got the property 2 doors away that fronts onto Alpha Road that does have accommodation at roof level. Nearby, next to that, you have 2 stories. So there is a mix of building heights. You can see that the ones in Ingle Close that back onto the road also have some first floor accommodation. So it's not unusual to have first floor accommodation, and the ridge height doesn't exceed the ridge height of the neighbouring properties. And I think it's for that reason that we feel that we couldn't argue in terms of our recommendation that this would have a significant impact on the character of the area. But it is appreciated, it is infilling in the gardens plot, and therefore, like I say, it's up to members to decide. If you feel that this hasn't gone far enough to address the concerns that you previously raised, then that's up for you to make that decision.
Councillor Wing.
I mean, I also don't disagree with anything anybody said. Would you put the aerial picture of the real? I just think it's a development that's quite higgledy-piggledy, but the character and appearances of higgledy-piggledy buildings that are all very individual in their nature, but one of space around the buildings, unlike where I live, where everybody's all on top of each other. So the character and appearance of my area is very built up, and this isn't. It's quite spacious and individual. Each is individual. So I do think that the stuff in a building in there destroys the character and appearance. It sort of breaks that whole section up, destroys the character and appearance of the area. It would like taking 4 buildings out of my road. It would destroy the character and appearance of the area because there's not meant to be gaps on my road. So yeah, I can't support it, I'm afraid.
Thank you. I don't think I have any other speakers. I will just add my own comment as a member of the committee. Standing in the neighbour's kitchen, it was quite startling just how oppressive this additional building would be, and it doesn't feel like it's moved enough or been shrunk enough to meet our concerns that those of us that were on the site visit had. So that's just my own personal view as a member of the committee. No other speakers, in which case we will now put the motion for the officer's recommendation for approval to the vote. Those in favour? And those against? And do I have any abstentions? So that's lost. Thank you. Just bear with us a moment. We're just going to do a brief adjournment. Just bear with me a minute. Standard procedure, obviously, once we have a refusal against the officer's recommendation, we need to come up with an alternative motion. Does anyone want to come forward and help us write that alternative motion? Councillor Garner, maybe? I shouldn't suggest you. But you often do. Councillor Wing instead. That's good. Anyone else? Okay, thank you. We'll...
There's a failure.
Okay, so we're now reconvened. Councillor Wing.
But there'll be a motion that will concentrate on impact on the character of area and neighbours, and our planning officer will read the motion out.
Thank you, Chair. So just to encapsulate the issues that members raised in the debate, so the two reasons for refusal for the motion would be, the first one would be that the proposed development by virtue of its location, scale and design would result in a cramped and congested form of development that appears out of keeping with the surrounding pattern of development, severely harmful to the character and appearance of the area, contrary to policy QDO2 of the Thanet Local Plan and policy B1 of the Birchington Neighbourhood Plan, and the separate reason for refusal with regards to living conditions would be that proposed development by virtue of its location, scale and proximity to and relationship with the neighbouring property would result in an overbearing impact and sense of enclosure to neighbouring occupiers, severely harmful to their living conditions, contrary to Thanet Local Plan QDO3.
Thank you. So the proposal from Councillor Wing is for refusal on the grounds that we've just heard read out. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Moore? And those in favour? Do I have no one against? So that's carried. Thank you. I'll give you a moment or two to leave. Those that don't want, I mean, I always say it, you're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting and enjoy it, but nobody ever takes me up on it, so I'll give you a moment or two to depart. Okay, thank you. We're moving on to agenda item 6B, which is application for approval of the item AO2 32 Hawley Square, Margate. Public speaking in favour of the application, Mr. Carter. Mr. Carter, you have 3 minutes.
Hello. I purchased what I perceived to be a beautiful old Georgian house, and it was my intention to it had suffered a lot of neglect over the years. It was my intention to reinstate the grandeur of this house, which is what I believe I've done. I've had numerous visits. Both the planning officer and the conservation officer have approved and had no issues. In respect of the outside building, there were 2 derelict sheds that had collapsed. They had polycarbonate roofs, and there was a Russian vine that had grown into these sheds and into the brickwork. It was all removed, and I built a flat roof over the sheds in order to place some pots for plants and a fence at the back in order for security and safety. I have an objection from a neighbour who believes that I have been in disrespect of her privacy. This is the last thing that I would ever was ever on my mind. I respect the privacy of all around me, and I also would like to add that it's not a roof terrace. It will never be a roof terrace. It is purely a flat roof with an alleyway behind, which is now, because the Russian vine had overgrown the walls and the alley behind, there was a lot of needles, there was a lot of alcohol, empty alcohol bottles, that people kind of nesting under the vine. That's all been cleaned up, and it feels it's much safer. The alleyway is now clean, it's much safer. In terms of the barbecue, which I've built, which is built out of brick, it stands 2 meters off the back facade. It does not attach to the garden wall, and it is 2 meters lower than the nearest branch of a tree. And it sits 70 centimetres on the racks, it's 70 centimetres below the brickwork. I don't see that as a fire risk. Yeah, that's about it.
Thank you. Speaking against the application, Ms Oldfield, you have 3 minutes. Oh, can you turn your microphone off, please, Mr Carter? Thank you.
Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. I'm Louise Oldfield from the next door property at 31 Hawley Square. I'm asking you to defer this application and conduct a site visit to both properties to see for yourselves the overlooking and privacy impact this new roof garden structure, heavy wooden and metal balustrade, not a simple trellis, as titled, has on our home and privacy. The applicant now climbs up and is able to look into our property and ground floor room. Officers have never visited our property. They say he doesn't go up there for long periods of time. How do they know? What about the future? He goes up frequently. Since early December last year, when our neighbour built his 3.22 metre structure without planning permission on top of our shared garden party wall without telling us, officers have refused every request to assess the impact from our property. The structure is misleadingly described as a trellis when it is a heaven wooden safety rail to contain lots of large potted plants and statues that the applicant climbs up regularly to attend to. When the applicant finally submitted an application 6 months later, it was only for listed building consent. We were then told that we wouldn't be able to comment on privacy or overlooking because you can only comment on heritage. Then they said planning permission would follow. Then they said they might not make him do planning permission because it wouldn't be expedient to enforce, but then there was a reason why he had to do planning permission. So finally it was submitted, and this is what's before you tonight. The officer then said, there's no balustrade being applied for because there isn't one. We're talking about a retrospective planning application here, and we pointed out and sent in a photograph of the balustrade, and then one was submitted. The first drawing was with the balustrade at 500 mil, then it was 600 mil, and then the officer said they weren't going to actually make him do the correct dimension, which brings the structure up to 3.22 metres. They've said it isn't a roof terrace because he doesn't go up there for long periods of time enough. As you know from the previous case that you've just listened to, you're talking about future applicants as well. But that said, he does go up frequently. It's his choice of garden for his garden pots that blow over, that need constant watering. They deemed the application was valid despite there being missing drawings of elevations from our side, from all sides, which is a requirement in a conservation area, and both buildings are grade 2 listed. They've visited 32 multiple times, but they've never visited us at 31.
I do need you to draw to a close, please.
We're just asking someone to please come and have a look. There's never been a building and an access like this. It's a structure, it's a platform that you can get up on and stand on the top of a 6-foot wall and then look into our garden and rear windows for the first time.
I need you to finish, thank you. I will hand over to the planning officers now, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the application site 32 Hawley Square, outlined in red here. And then an aerial view of the property. So you can see it's a terrace property. It lies within the conservation area and it's a grade 2 listed building. And then a close-up view. These aren't really great visuals, I'm afraid. Then this is the proposed block plan showing the rear garden to the rear of the site. And then these are some photos showing the development. So The property has already had listed building consent. It's a retrospective application, so fully retrospective. The proposals were to include the replacement of the windows within the front and rear elevation and the replacement of the railings. So these photos are showing the works that have already taken place. And it is considered that these works are acceptable and do look to enhance the appearance of the building as a Grade 2 listed building. And also the setting of the building and the conservation area as well. So again, this is the front elevation of the building, and then the building set within the terrace. And then this is from the rear, so there's a small access way to the rear of the property. So this is the property on the right hand side. So the other part of the proposal is the replacement of the roof to the outbuilding at the rear, and the erection of this trellis that runs around the edge of the roof. So the reasoning for the trellis is to prevent the plant pots that have been placed on the roof from falling into this alleyway. And then again, this is another view of the trellis that you can see above the outbuilding from the rear. So you can see in terms of visual harm, this is whilst it is a public viewpoint from the rear, there would be limited movement along this walkway. The conservation officer has raised no concern in terms of the actual erection of the trellis in terms of its impact on the conservation area. So this is the rear elevation of the property. So again, these windows have been replaced, and this was a window and has now been replaced with French doors. And then this is the side elevation facing the neighbour. So again, the rear elevation is on the left-hand side. This is the neighbour's property here. This is the barbecue that was referred to. And again, some trellis on the boundary line here. And then this is looking towards the rear. So this is looking towards the rear outbuilding, which has the plant pots on the roof there, and then has the trellis running around the edge of the roof. So again, in terms of the plans, these were just the existing front elevation and proposed front elevation. So you can see that the openings were all the same. It's just replacement of the windows. And then the existing rear elevation and the proposed rear elevation. So some changes to the French doors in this location here. And then this is the rear outbuilding. So the existing front elevation prior to the works. And then this was the front elevation as built. So you can see the timber garden at the roof level that runs around the edge of the roof, annotated as 600 millimetres on the plan. So yes, there were some errors with the plans, so amended plans have been sought to correct the height of the garden, and this is the plan now before members. So the impacts being considered are the impact on the conservation area and impact on the setting of the listed building and neighbouring living conditions. So the conservation officer has visited the site and considers that the majority of these works, as I mentioned, to the main building to be an enhancement. In terms of the impact on the outbuilding to the rear, she doesn't consider that the actual replacement of the roof or the trellis would be significantly harmful to the conservation area, and therefore raises no objections. The concern raised by the neighbour links to overlooking. So if this was a roof terrace above the outbuilding, then yes, we would consider that there would be harm to the neighbouring living conditions from overlooking, because if you stood on this roof, you would be able to look directly into the neighbouring property. But that is not what is being proposed here. It is just a flat roof for plant pots with the timber garden around it, and to safeguard the privacy of the neighbour, a safeguarding condition has been proposed that the flat roof of the outbuilding shall not be used as a roof terrace for the purposes of outdoor living and shall only be used for access and maintenance purposes, and that would be for forevermore. So that would safeguard the neighbouring privacy from that roof being used as a roof terrace, and therefore is considered that the impact on the neighbour is acceptable, and therefore as a whole it is recommended that the application is approved. Thank you.
Thank you. I move that the officer's recommendation for approval is adopted. Would the Vice Chair please second?
Seconded.
And do I, Councillor Moore first? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you. So the flat roof is a flat roof with trellis at the back to make the corridor passageway look pretty, or whatever you want to call it. But the applicant has now got potted plants on this flat roof, which he now has to maintain. Well, you just said the only access point was for maintenance, and I would have said maintenance would be to the flat roof, not to a garden feature, which is now made. And therefore, if he is on that roof, then I can understand the neighbour having issues about privacy and overlooking. And they are both very plausible. They've both spoken very eloquently in both parts, and it doesn't really show me exactly what that is. So I would think maybe this would possibly be a site visit where the committee could go and look on that flat roof and see what it is, because if he is going up on that roof regularly to maintain his potted plants, why he's got them up there I don't know, but if he is doing that, then maybe there might be a condition where screening is put up if the defendant was still of a mind that he's going to do that. But, you know, I just think there is an issue there, and maybe it's not clear from the pictures we've seen. We can't see how that overlooking impacts on the neighbour, so maybe a site visit might be prudent. Thank you.
Councillor Matterface next.
I would take issue with that definition of a trellis, because I would say that's a fence. Trellis by definition is supporting climbing plants, or if you've got fruit trees, espalier. So I mean, I'm intrigued why the word trellis is in there. I kind of agree with Councillor Moore. I'm not clear from what Miss Oldfield said about how it impacts on her. So I think if anybody else has concerns, perhaps we should go and have a look. But I would say my main point is that is not a trellis by definition. Thank you.
I've got Councillor Rattigan next.
Thank you, Chair. I think because the clause the officers have put in that he can't, you know, no one in the future can use that as a garden. I don't think we can stop. You know, if I want to go on my roof and sort of, you know, potter around, there's no sort of law that would stop me from doing that. So the planning officers stopped so that no one can ever go on there and use it as a garden, you know, or anything like that. So I don't really see what the issue would be.
Councillor Green.
My problem here is I haven't been shown what this looks like from the neighbour's property, and I think before we make a decision, I'd like to see that.
Councillor Garner next.
Yeah, when is a flat roof just a flat roof, and when is a flat roof a garden? That's the I mean, the way the house has been done looks really nice. You know, lovely what they've done, what he's done to the house. Great, and restoring it to its former glory, brilliant. But you know, and when you have got a flat roof on an outbuilding, you do need access to it to repair it occasionally if it needs repairing. But if you start putting a load of pots on it and you go in there every day, especially when we have our warmer summers with climate change, you're going to be up there watering it all the time. It does seem a bit odd to me. And if it is overlooking the garden, then it is an issue. And I think I agree. We do need to go and have a look. Thank you.
Councillor Wing.
I mean, I agree. I'd like a site visit because I'd like to see, you know, an aerial view of the roof, which has now seems. Is it covered in pots, which means the person has to get onto the roof and water all the pots. I don't have an issue with the trellis come fence. I accept that point as well. And clearly, there's an absolutely wonderful job has been done to a Grade 2 listed building, which isn't an easy feat. They're not difficult buildings to work on, but we can't see how it's impacting. We can't see what you can see on top of that. And it's interesting because when we have a flat roof that's on the back of a building, we normally force them to put a Juliet balcony in so they can't get onto the roof. Which was, I've been here when there's been several planning applications where they've had doors that have opened in so you can't actually get onto the roof. You've got to go out and get up onto it to maintain the roof. And I agree, maintaining the roof is maintaining the roof. It isn't putting pots on there and watering it. So I'd like to see a bit more, please. Do I have any other speakers?
Okay, in that case, we will now put the motion for the officer's recommendation for approval to the vote. I do have 4 people that have said that they want a site visit, which actually brings it up to 5. And so just to remind you, if you want a site visit, you have to vote against it in order for us to move to a site visit at the next stage. So I don't know if there's anyone else that is of that mind. But if you are, just to remind you of that. So those in favour of the motion for recommendation for approval as it is, please indicate now. Thank you. And those against? Any abstentions? So that's lost. At this point, I think I will just go straight into recommending a site visit. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Garner. And those in favour of a site visit, please indicate. That is carried. Thank you. So that's a reminder, we will have a site visit on January the 2nd. Thank you. Who decided that, he's saying? Yeah, I know, I saw that. I thought that when I saw it.
It wasn't me.
Site visit on January the 2nd. Thank you. We're just having a debate on the date. Just bear with me a minute.
Chair.
Friday the 2nd.
Chair, can I make it? It's in the holiday season. You know, you've got availability. Children are off school. People are off work. Can we not use common sense here and just move it a week?
On the 9th?
On the 9th, you know.
Okay, fine.
So I think,
Yeah.
It seems that we have a popular view of moving the site visit to Friday the 9th. If both the residents are happy with that, then we will move to Friday the 9th. Thank you. So on this occasion, it will be the 2nd Friday of the month, not the 1st. So thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. We're now on to agenda item 6K, application for approval. This is the E. Saunders North Down Road. Sorry, no, hang on a minute. Let me just stop. I have a muddle up on my form again. It's an application to refuse. E. Saunders North Down Road, Margate. Public speaking in favour of the application. Mr. Saunders, you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. Basically, we have applied to redevelop our property. We have been in situ on North Down Road for over 100 years. Locally employ between 50 and 55 people, running domestic work, working in the hospitals, schools, and being a big part of the community. The building is old. The building is not really fit for purpose. There's a lot of empty space there, as we used to have a store, and we've applied to have the building redeveloped with a view that we are moving our offices into the stores downstairs and refurbishing upstairs, potentially into flats. My actual personal preference, if this goes ahead, is to let the top out for commercial. I would rather commercial, and that's what we'll be aiming to do. But overall, we've agreed to the planning conditions. We're going to keep the fascia. We want to keep the feel of the building. We want to keep the signage. We want people to walk past the building and still see it for what it was 50, 60, 70 years ago as part of the community and as part of Thanet. The only thing which we would like to do is, it's been requested that we replace the top windows for wooden windows, sash windows, and really we would like to go down the line of installing a very good quality UPVC window called the Ultimate Rose window, still a sash window, and I would struggle to see from ground level how you could tell if they were any different from wooden windows. Twofold, this is acceptable in many other areas in heritage sites. They look, to all intents and purposes, exactly the same as a wooden window, with the added benefit that we can put double glazing on them, which is energy efficient and is going to provide a far more effectively heated building. And being in a coastal area, I'm sure we're all aware, wood does not last. It is a constant maintenance issue, and this will really help us make a decision. The easiest decision for us is to get rid of the building and move out to an industrial estate. I genuinely don't want to do that, but I would just, and we'd like to adhere to everything else. I'd just like a little bit of help to say, you know what, we can go down the line of putting in something which in all intents and purposes does look like a heritage-based sash window. I can leave the details here of it if anyone would like a look at it. As I said, it's something that will help us stay there, help us stay where we want to stay, and will maintain us in that position as part of the community, offering employment in the area, not just another building that's sort of sold off for whatever it would be sold off for. I believe, hopefully, that is it. Oh, sorry, the other thing is there's almost, you look along it, there's hardly any other buildings on that road with anything other than PVC and not sash. So we are looking to maintain the look. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I will hand over to the planning officer, whichever one it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is the site outlined in red on Northdown Road. The site is on the corner of Warwick Road and Northdown Road. So the proposal is an application under Section 73 of the Planning Act to vary two conditions, Condition 2, which is a plan condition, and Condition 5, which is a condition on the previous permission which sought the timber windows it specifically talks about the eastern elevation. However, it's confirmed in the application itself that all of the windows were proposed to be timber in the previous consent. The previous consent was for the change of use of the upper floors from offices to two-bed flats with various other works. You can see it in the second page of the officer committee report. To outline that. The main issues in terms of the change that's been proposed is the impact on the conservation area. So there are a few typos in the report. To just confirm, this is within the Northdown Road conservation area, and it's adjacent to the conservation area which is the Warwick Road, Surrey Road conservation area. Just looking at the site itself, it's a very prominent building on one of the corners of Northdown Road. Just to confirm, the conservation area for Northdown Road spans a long distance, and it's right at the end on the northern sort of side of Northdown Road. This is a plan that is in the townscape appraisal map within the conservation area appraisal for this conservation area, and it is identifying that this is a building that has a positive effect on the conservation area, as nearly all of the buildings along Northdown Road do, but it is not listed, which is obviously an important point. So this is a view on the front elevation of the building. So we are looking, as you can see, delineated by the fascia sign at the three windows here, the three windows at first floor, as well as there. So you can see here, as mentioned, that the windows of the first and second floor of the rest of the building have been changed to UPVC. There are different types. So you've got windows that are sort of centrally hung that will sort of lift out, so sort of casement windows. Then you've got sort of tilt and turn casement windows for there, similar sort of windows that are there. So these are all double glazed UPVC fronting Northdown Road. So this is just a front-on view of those windows. It is important in terms of the context to note, though, that these windows were also UPVC in 2016, which this image from Google shows, when the conservation area was designated. So it was not a conservation area until 2016, when it was then designated. So it does mean that there is a different consideration now to potentially any considerations that did occur before that point with regards to those windows, whether or not they needed planning permission or not. So this is the building showing the sort of corner view. So you can see the windows on the side elevation, of which you've got 10 windows that are at the moment single glazed timber sliding sash. This is a straight-on view, and a view just from down below. So you can see that some of the windows, if I go in a bit closer, are in need of refurbishment. Again, another typo in the officer report. It hasn't been confirmed that these windows are rotten and totally and utterly cannot be used. However, as you can see, they are in need of refurbishment. So that is acknowledged that they do need doing up for that to that extent, and there's some more detail there as well. It also proposes to change the windows at the rear on the bay window. The bay window has actually got approval to be sort of rebuilt in terms of underneath this, but the previous proposal, I'm sorry, you've got 2 casement windows there as well, and the casement window there. All of those windows were proposed to be timber windows within the previous application, so potentially replacement, or obviously they don't necessarily need to implement the consent if they were to just refurbish the ones that were there. Sorry, that's just the detail of the rear elevation, but you can see again the neighbouring property has UPVC windows at the rear, so there is UPVC certainly obviously in the adjacent building. Just to confirm one point in terms of change that's occurred from the previous application, there is an internal change that there is a new corridor that's being put forward in this area here. So the internal layout has changed for the commercial unit, but the upper floors remain the same as per the approval in terms of being the two-bed flats. And then you've got, sorry, this is just the roof that's there as well. So as mentioned, the main issue is the impact on the conservation area. We have got concerns that have been raised by officers and by the conservation officer specifically with regards to the change from timber vertically sliding sash windows that are single glazed to double glazed timber windows. The report does go through the proposed windows, which we've been provided with details and the manufacturer's information about the design of these particular windows. The elevations that you can see in front of you do show the windows to match the design in terms of glazing bars, in terms of horns, as the timber windows that are there at the moment. However, they will be double glazed, so they will have the gap between the glazing. It's been stated as being 2.8 centimetres, obviously, whereas there would not be a gap in the glazing. It is noted that the point that's been raised about how much will you see of this, because obviously it is at the upper level. It is a consideration of both the conservation officer and the planning officer that it would appear to be new windows in there that you would consider and see the fact that they are double glazed. They are without doubt, the better form of new PVC windows from the information that's been submitted. However, it has been the consideration that it would dilute the appearance of the conservation area because these are the remaining timber windows on this building. They do have more importance on this building because they are the traditional materials. It's also noted that we are looking at paragraph 140 of the MPPF. That does state that local authorities should seek to ensure that the quality of approved development is not materially diminished between permission and completion as a result of changes being made to the permitted scheme, for example, through changes to the approved details, such as the materials used. So, the MPPF is specifically talking about this sort of situation where something has been agreed in an application and then it is sought to reduce, the quality of the scheme, which we do consider that this would. So whilst taking account of the fact that these are the higher quality UPVC windows, we do still consider that they would result in harm to the conservation area, and therefore the application is recommended for refusal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I move that the officer's recommendation for refusal refusal is adopted. Would the Vice Chair please second?
Seconded.
And I have Councillor Rattigan wanting to speak first. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, I called in this application. I have a real big bugbear with windows, because while I completely appreciate we're in areas, a conservation area, we're in a climate emergency, and these windows, when I've seen other examples, you would not be, even with someone that deals with windows, in builds all the time, you would not be able to really tell the difference. Apart from the slight gaps, perhaps in the glazing, we always say that the downfall outweighs the benefits, and the benefits here is that you've got thermal, you've got much more thermal windows. So I really can't see, with the effort that's gone into sort of matching like, as Ian said, the design, the horns, everything like that, I can't see there any problem.
Thank you. Councillor Moore.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's a shame that obviously all the other windows were done prior to 2016 when it was made a conservation area. And if you look at the building as a whole entity, to leave those wooden ones which are single glazed, to me is out of keeping, to blend, that make the whole building blend as one. And I agree with Councillor Rattigan. I think on this occasion, I think I would go against refusal and would consider that they be allowed to put the UPVC in to improve everything with the building for the upstairs, but also to make it all look uniform and symmetrical. And you wouldn't tell the difference from the ground. The only difference you would tell, if you went up with a measure and you measured the gap between the two layers of glass, you will not tell the difference. And we've already been told by the applicant that it's a high quality UPVC framework and glazing that's going to better the building. So I can't go with the refusal, I'm afraid. Thank you.
Councillor Garner.
Thank you. I have an awful lot of sympathy with the officer here, because I share his and others' frustration when applicants get approval on for changes, that they agree to do things and then come back to change them. I will say though, however, on this occasion, I'm not really sure it's a fight it's a hill that I'm prepared necessarily to die on to stop them doing this. There are other hills that I am prepared to die on, but this isn't one of them. That to stop them doing this when we know that the windows next door have already UPVC because they were done before the conservation area. So I'm minded not to approve the refusal.
Councillor Matterface.
I was going to say everybody said what I was going. My point. I do recall we had a long debate about the international store along the way, which wasn't in keeping, and we voted against the refusal there. Modern windows can be replicated to look exactly the same as what was there before. It seems sensible in terms of maintenance. We have an old house, and the windows we got put in look like wood, although they're not, because we were the first people to have black replacement sealed units. I can't see a problem, so I'm quite happy to vote against the officer's recommendation over this.
Councillor Wing.
Conflicted again. I mean, it's clearly a very handsome building, but I think you need to take the whole frontage. So obviously we see on North Down Road where the bottom half of that building isn't in keeping with the way it used to be. But, you know, there's an application coming near me, well, it was withdrawn, where the shop front is intact, and it would be detrimental to the entire building if you did put UPVC in. I can't see a problem with them at the back. I think after a year you will see the difference between the UPVC at the top and the wooden ones at the bottom, because, like's been said, they're harder to maintain, the paint will start flaking off. So, I mean, I'm minded to approve, but I would like to see the building with UPVC throughout, so that there is no difference between any of the buildings, any of the windows in the building. And I think it would still be a very handsome building. It looks a bit of a mess, because it is a bit of a mess, because it's all higgledy-piggledy further along on the block, and if there was some consistency along the block, that top half of the building would look really, really handsome.
Okay, so we will now put the motion for the officer's recommendation for refusal to the vote. Would those in favour of refusal please indicate? Those against? Thank you. Any abstentions? That's lost. At this point, I'm going to hand to the Planning Applications Manager, because we don't need to discuss this, and he's got it ready written.
So, as Councillor Crittenden has alluded to, this is going one of two ways because of the consideration. And ultimately, in this instance, the majority of members that were speaking referred to it really that the change from timber to this particular type of UPVC wouldn't harm the conservation area. That's my summary of that. One thing that obviously we have to do if you're changing a recommendation from officers for refusal is you have to give reasons to approve something. This is a slightly different situation, because this is a variation of condition of a previous application. So what we need to do, I say you need to do, is in issuing the planning decision, we need to reimpose all of the conditions from the previous application that are still relevant, of which this application proposes directly to change condition 2 to update with the new plans, and change condition 5. Condition 5 is the one that says the windows should be timber. Now, the other element of things which does need to be addressed is the fact that condition 4 on that approval is actually requesting the submission of joinery details. Now, if you're approving your PVC windows, there aren't going to be joinery details. So what I would suggest as a recommendation, if I may outline a potential motion that would need a proposer and a seconder, would be that the application is deferred for approval, and I'll explain why that is in a minute, deferred for approval, as the proposal would preserve the character of the conservation area, subject to the receipt of a deed of variation securing the SAMS contribution, which is the second reason for refusal that you have seen in the report, and safeguarding conditions as per FTH 24/1381, and to update condition 4 being the joinery details condition, but to require manufacturer's details of the final window design for all openings, including reveals, prior to the installation of the windows hereby approved. Now that's because we have got manufacturer's details. The applicant has mentioned that it's the ultimate row style. We've been given the pictures of what the sash windows look like, but we don't have the details of all the casement windows, and you could see that there are different widths in the windows that are proposed to be changed. So I do think it would be appropriate to get that information sent in just before they install them, once they've instructed on the quote, etc. So it would be to defer for approval subject to conditions and the receipt of a deed of variation to get the obligations for the SAMs.
Can I have a proposer? Councillor Moore and Councillor Wing seconding. Those in favour? Anyone against? And any abstentions? So that is now carried. Thank you. And that concludes the public speaking for tonight's meeting, and we are almost there. So I will now call upon the clerk to read out the remaining planning applications. If any member wishes to reserve an application, will they please call out as the clerk reads? Thank you.
AO3 477 Margate Road, Broadstairs. AO4 Key Edge, Crosswall and West Pier Ramsgate. AO5 10 Guy Close, Broadstairs. AO6 Ethelbert Square Gardens, Westgate Bay Avenue, Westgate-on-Sea. Adrian Square Gardens, Westgate Bay Avenue, Westgate-on-Sea. All Saints Church, AO8, All Saints Church, The Square, Birchington. AO9, St Mary's Church, Church Street, Minster.
A10, North Down Park, Margate. And that's all.
Thank you. Can I have a proposer to move that the applications that have not been reserved be determined in accordance with the officer's recommendation? Councillor Rattigan, seconded by Councillor Britcher. Your name went from my head momentarily there. Do members agree? Agreed. Thank you. So that concludes the last meeting of the year. Thank you all very much for being here, and season's greetings, whatever your season may be. Thank you. Good night.